Welcome to StopFake, the place where we set the record straight on fakes about Ukraine. I'm Marko Suprun with StopFake's latest dissection of Russia's alternate reality. This week's disinformation menu brings you the following. Mendacious Russian claims about Ukrainians' future visa travel to the EU Schengen zone. Moscow claims Ukraine used a video game as evidence in its International Criminal Court suit against Russia. And the massive European demonstrations in support of Donbas that actually were not in the least bit massive. Let's get to the details. Russia's Sputnik Radio featured a story this week claiming that Ukrainians would not get the visa-free travel to the EU for which Kyiv had been negotiating with Brussels. In an article dripping with contempt and condescension towards Ukraine and Ukrainians, Sputnik's commentator Vladimir Filippov announces that while Ukrainians will get EU visas, they will not get what they wanted most, the right to work in the EU. Despite this, Filippov declares, Europeans will teach Ukrainians how to gradually become accustomed to civilization. Now, work visas for Ukrainians were never part of the visa-free negotiations between the European Union and Ukraine. Ukrainian media devoted countless articles about visa-free travel to EU countries, emphasizing that the visas in question were 90-day tourist visas for the Schengen zone. Work or residency visas for the Schengen zone are not part of the agreement. So what's the Schengen zone, you might be wondering? Well, it's not a territory of space under Cardassian control next to the neutral zone on Star Trek. In fact, the Schengen zone is the result of a treaty signed in 1985 that largely abolished border controls for travelers, as well as common visas for states that signed on to the treaty. Currently, 26 European states have signed on to the treaty that allows for visa-free travel. But Filippov tries to make an ominous claim that visa-free travel for Ukrainians does not apply to Great Britain and Ireland, not only because Britain has chosen Brexit, but because foggy Albion is already brimming with migrants. And he falls about a mile away from making any sense, because visa-free travel for Ukrainians does not apply to the UK and Ireland because these countries are not part of the Schengen zone. Travel to those countries was also never part of the EU-Ukraine negotiations. So Filippov's claim that Ukrainians will get limited visa-free travel is completely false. Ukrainian nationals will have the same rights as other non-EU countries whose nationals are exempt from visa requirements. Filippov is writing for a Russian audience whose prospects for visa-free travel to the Schengen zone are currently as foggy as the Albion that has never been part of the zone. Russian newspaper Moskovsky Komsomolets accused Ukraine of presenting a staged video as evidence at a hearing before the UN International Court of Justice in The Hague. As proof, Ukraine demonstrated a video game seemingly showing Russian transporting heavy artillery for the militia in eastern Ukraine, the newspaper writes. This spurious claim is not supported by any evidence, link, or explanation. The hearing was part of Ukraine's suit against Russia for financing terrorism and racial discrimination. The animation that Russian media has deliberately misrepresented as a video game is actually a documentary visualization prepared by the Joint Investigation Team, a group of detectives from Holland, Australia, Belgium, Malaysia, and Ukraine. The team spent more than 2 years compiling evidence on the 2014 downing of Malaysian flight MH17. The video is part of their findings, concluding that the MH17 was shot down by a missile brought in from Russia. The documentary visualization was presented to the court as a computer-generated graphic and nothing else. It uses evidence gathered by the investigation team, showing the route taken by the Russian missile launcher in a convoy into Ukraine. The full session of the ICG hearing is available on the court's website, where the documentary visualization is also available. Anyone wishing to can see for themselves exactly what this is. Russian media reported that on March 5, Europeans staged massive demonstrations in support of Donbas, the eastern Ukrainian industrial region currently occupied by Russian occupation forces and their proxies. The demonstrations were in fact made up of small groups of immigrants from the former Soviet Union, who gathered in several European capitals holding signs such as Je suis Donbas and Stop the Genocide in Donbas. All the demonstrations featured self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic flags, Russian national flags, and red flags of the former Soviet Union, and the notorious black and orange St. George's ribbon, a Russian military symbol widely associated with Russian nationalist and separatist sentiment. The demonstrators accused Ukraine of not abiding to the Minsk ceasefire agreement, of staging a coup in the country, and conducting genocide against Donbas residents. The term genocide is used very often in Russian propaganda, and one of the telltale signs of a fake. The rallies were organized by Donetsk People's Republic activist Snezhana Ayendo. Speaking on the Abkhazian network news channel, or ANA News, Ayendo thanked the pro-Putin Russian biker gang, the Night Wolves, and the National Liberation Movement, an extremist group which believes Russia is a colony of the United States, for helping organize the protests. The demonstrators sacrificed their hard-earned funds, hand-painted the signs at night because they believe that they are the Donbas, Ayendo said. Snezhana Ayendo's site, yadonbas.rus, contains video from the various sparsely attended rallies. The participants all speak Russian amongst themselves. Some hold signs accusing Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko of orchestrating the war. The site also features a list of protest organizers and their social media accounts. They are all either Russian or pro-Russian societies. To allege that Europeans massively took to the streets protesting the war in eastern Ukraine is clearly a gross overstatement of what were essentially a few small and insignificant pro-Russian gatherings that only Kremlin propaganda reported. That's it for this week. You can get more information about these and other stories on the StopFake website. Remember to give us a click and a share. Be vigilant, beware of fakes. If you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, send it to us for a truth autopsy. Remember, consuming fake news is bad for your health, your brain, and the psychological climate of society. Be fake-free, my friends. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.